Hi, this is Mark Soden. I'm here with Fog Machine Events, and I'm here with Ryan Gan of Insufficient Despair.
Oh, hi there. Yes, I'm Ryan Gan, aka Insufficient Despair, a noise project. I'm out of Torrance, California. And for those of you who don't know where Torrance is, it's called the like South Bay of Los Angeles. So I'm about 10 minutes or so, 10, 15 minutes or so south of the LAX airport. And other neighboring cities are like Gardena, Hawthorne, Lawndale. And then as you get further west, there'll be Redondo Beach, Hermosa Beach, and whatnot. So that's where I'm situated towards.
What led you to experiment with noise?
Well, I've kind of had about 20 or so years ago, I was good friends with Phil Blankenship, who some of you might know runs the Tronics label. And I remember he was giving me some of his cassettes from his project at the time, Left-Handed Decision. And I was like, oh wow, this is really nice. He would kind of hand out this cassette and say, hey, and then I would sometimes, like when we were hanging out, he would play a little snippet of noise to kind of go before he would went out. So we'd listen to like maybe a minute or so, and I would listen with him. I remember that was a cool thing. But we used to, I Phil worked at I think he still works at Amoeba, but we would get together and watch like old VHS tapes that he would find that would be very interesting. So this was kind of when VHS was on the outs, and so he'd go like, "Hey, I have this random like VHS tape of like a horror." They were mostly kind of like horror movies, so we would watch things that I never really heard of. One of this Canadian movie called Pin with a mannequin in it, and he'd pop some popcorn, and I just like, yeah, we'd hang out. And so yeah, he was a big into noise, and I think he's still like a titan of the U.S. noise scene. So he held a fest called Tronics Fest, and I would kind of like, yeah, he's like, I'm holding it, and I would go and go to his Tronics Fest and see the noise artists, and I'd be like, oh, this is kind of cool. At the time, I was a kind of more of in a conventional garage rock band, and but I would go see experimental music when I could. So there was a big scene called the Spock Morgue scene, and there was also another scene called Brutal SFX, which were centered around the Carolina crew. And so I would go see those, but I was kind of tied to like, okay, the traditional rock band thing, we could release a record. We're going to play like all the kind of venues around in the city in what we call San Francisco and then Oakland and the Bay Area. So I didn't really think about like, oh, I'm going to make a, do noise or like make noise, produce noise. So flash forward year, and then probably this is a touchstone for a lot of people during lockdown and quarantine. I had an old mixer that I kind of came into my hands that was kind of like donated, and I had this old mixer, and I was like, oh, I'm probably going to use it for maybe some sort of like video project, or I might use it just to kind of like manage sound. And then for some reason or another, I heard someone say, hey, you can make a, uh, an instrument out of that. Like it's called no input mixer. And I was like, oh, really? Like what's that? And so I kind of filed that in the back of my head. And then across the street from me, like a house, they had like someone put out like a Fender frontman. I have like a 10G or 15G like out on the curb. So I have these like found sound instruments. So I got the amp, and then I paired it with the no input mixer, and then I ordered some cables, and I kind of wired the sends into the receives, and then I use the phone out, and then it started making this noise, and I was like, oh wow, this is kind of neat. Like um, I want to give a shout out to Sarah Bell Reed, who is a experimental musician, and she posted a lot of videos on YouTube on no input mixing, and I really have to thank her for kind of my approach to it. So so then I started kind of like spending time and refining sound, listening to exploring the no input mixer paired with the guitar amp, which is also part of the setup too, because um, it has its own character. When it's getting the signal from the no input mixer, it's very hot and it affects the sound. Um, so I was playing and I was thinking and I was like, okay. And then I applied to kind of sound like, oh, Fog Machine over at Joshua Tree. I kind of like sent, hey, I'd like to play when we got out of quarantine. And then kindly you had a spot that was open and then you let me know that I could play. And that was kind of my first show with this project back in January. And so I was like, oh, I wonder how it's going to go because I hadn't really played live. And it was pretty well received. I really liked the musicians there were really great and they were really receptive after I played. And so I was like, oh wow, great. Maybe we got something going here. So I've been kind of that's the story of how I've kind of made noise. One more aside, one more thing. I had the great benefit of being able to go on vacation in Tokyo, in Japan, like late last year, and I had listened to Toshimaru Nakamura, who's a long Stanley like virtuoso of the no input mixer, and I found him on Twitter, and then I sent him a message like earlier in my trip. I was like, oh, hey, Nakamura-san, I am in Tokyo. I would like to get a lesson from you or whatever, or talk with you. And I kind of sent a message to him, kind of just a long shot. And he didn't get back to me until maybe a couple of days later, but he said, yeah, I'll meet you. I'll meet you. We're going to meet in Shimoda Kitazawa, which is a part of part of Tokyo. And so we met and at this like nice bar and drank like a sweet potato shochu. We kind of just talked for a bit and then there was just some great he had just really great insights. It was really great to meet him and talk with him. And I was seeing some experimental music shows with Otomo Yoshihide was playing in Shinjuku at the famous or infamous Pit Inn. And so we talked about that show that I went to. And then I was seeing Keiko Higuchi along with Tetsuji Akiyama uh, over in not Koenji at another venue. It escapes me right now, but he knows all of them and was like, we just talked about Japanese experimental music too as well.
Do you have a piece of gear that you're going to use that you find inspiring and would like to tell us about? You already told us about the mixer
Yeah.
and the amp, and it is a magical combination because it works together so well. It really fills the room. It's pretty
Yeah.
something.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So funny you should mention today, I've got a new amp that I'm going to be incorporating into the project, which is my one of my longtime friends, Joel Morales, aka Joel Jerome, who's been in big bands like Dios, Tasha Bella. He's also a producer and recording engineer. And I went to one of his shows down in Long Beach, and I was mentioning my project and saying, "Hey, I would really like some more bass and like sub frequency, like low end." And he referred me to the Fender Rumble series, which is
Mm-hmm.
a series of bass amps that are a bass amp and speaker combo. And so I recently got a Fender Rumble 500, and it is wow, wow. The next show is going to be the Fender Rumble 500, and then the Fender 10G frontman, kind of like the Fender 10G I'm wiring. So what's really unique about the mixer is like the no input mixer is I can use another out where I could send the high frequencies to the 10G, and then I configured like the low G, and it doesn't have like a regular crossover, but I can configure it where it will have like there's a contour setting which will have like the highs and the mids or like the very low end. So it's going to give a lot of oomph to and also the reason why I'm so wanting to have my own amps is because I don't want to blow out someone else's PA system, because the no input mixer signal is very hot and it sends out a lot of power. So yeah, so I'm really excited to unveil that at the next show. This Fender Rumble 500. Ooh, it
E-
is loud.
Exceptional. That sounds
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
So, what is the noise scene like in your area?
Well, I probably LA is the best probably thing to talk about. Torrance doesn't really have one right now, but I'm kind of trying, you know. So thanks for working with me on that one. So I'll talk about what's around here now. So Micah Silver, who is on the same bill for the Torrance Art Museum show in October, um, he's part of a scene where he's experimental music. He runs a venue called Black Hole LA. And I remember meeting with him because I heard about him from San Pedro. He had done an exhibit there, but he has a space in the tradition of Lamont Young and Marion Zarzella's Dream House Theater. And so it's a space where you can listen to multi-channel speakers and listen to different sessions like from Catherine Christer Hennix, Bernard Parmigiani, Luke Ferrari, like music concrete and experimental musicians from the past, but also I think some contemporary ones. So that's a great scene. Like you could book and then you have like this private concert for a very nominal fee. And so that's really cool. That's in the city of Gardena. And now we're going to have the show in Torrance. But in Los Angeles, I think the big noise scene is like Coaxial Arts and maybe Handbad Factory, which they do their yearly festival. San Pedro just had a show with Gabby Strong and Rotary ECT, which is Christopher Reed Martin, who is also an experimental musician. I think he works with Max MSP. The Coaxial Arts, the big bookers are probably there's Johnny Cash, Sunk Cost, aka Breakdancing Ronald Reagan, who's been booking a lot of good shows at Coaxial Arts, and then Paul Haney, who is Rust Worship, and he books shows there. So um, it's been it's been good. Before that, it was probably The Smell, like Bob Bellarue
Hmm.
would book shows. Who's now he books End Times in down New York. He's left, but he was kind of part of the Il Corral. So LA's kind of had a big, healthy noise scene.
Hmm.
Um, there's a noise podcast by the Connollys, Mike Connolly, Tara Connolly, and I think Gray Holger, where they're from Los Angeles, or they're in Los Angeles now, and they do a noise podcast on the history of prominent noise musicians, kind of like around the 90s and before. So that's been kind of interesting.
What's the name of the podcast?
The podcast is called Noise Extra. So
Okay.
and that's a really great show. They're very enthusiastic and they have great guests on, and yeah, big shout out to them. So I've been listening to that as well.
So, how do you prepare for a performance?
So what I've been doing is I kind of practice where I'll go see a show. I'll kind of think about what's I found was very interesting about maybe some acts that I really liked. So um, I caught Fancy Feces. He's known as Instagram, but Mitchell Brown, who's on Dub Lab, and at the Handbag Factory show, he just had such really great low end, like really good bass noise. And usually with noise, we kind of, at least what I think I associate, there's a lot of high end and mids, which a lot of scratchy, a lot of squelching, like a lot of maybe like really crunching sounds, high pitched sounds. But the bass, and I think what what struck me from a past quote by Hospital Records guy, Dominic from Hospital Records from Purient. He said that the high noise is kind of like a very cerebral. That's kind of lives in the cerebral land when you're playing high pitched noise. But the low end is like the body, and so it you can feel the sub frequencies, the bass frequencies, the low frequencies, and if I can get that real loud, it's also more kinder to the listener because those high frequencies, like they can really get in your ear a lot. And I try to respect the listener where I don't have those on so much. But this bass and this Fender Rumble 500 that I'm excited to incorporate into the set, I think we'll have that bass. So when I'm preparing, I think about the listener. I also think of maybe how I'm going to build my set as kind of like a meal for the listener. So I think about like what there are some concepts that I want. Maybe I want this nice standing wave of like a low wave to incorporate in my set that kind of repeats like a wow, wow. That will be a set piece. I have one where I'm I'd like to do like free improv on maybe like on some of the knobs to do like some high pitch stuff. Speaking of high frequencies, to kind of like get the listener's attention, and then I have some other concepts that I want to like execute during the plays. But most of my set is very improvisational, and so I have maybe some set concepts that I want to kind of execute, but there are other things where I'm feeling, okay, I want to do this in the moment and kind of feel out how I'm going to play at the time, whereas I'm hitting these kind of concepts that I have. So usually in a practice session, I'll kind of do some exploration of with volume, with levels, like where knobs are at, um, and maybe certain of my channels that are behaving. But I don't really subscribe to like, oh, I'm going to have these different patches and this is how it's going to execute, because depending even on temperature or voltage, like the patches are going to like the sounds are not going to be the same. So it's kind of like writing like this beast. It's like a beast, and like you're trusting in the no input mixer. And even different mixers behave in different ways. Like I've listened to different types of mixers that are played in a no input mixer setting, and though it's similar, they're not exactly the same as the one that I have too, so that I'm playing.
Let's talk a little bit about what's coming up in October. We have a show at Torrance Art Museum on the 21st, and that's going to be on the patio at the Torrance Art Museum. And it's going to start at 1 in the afternoon and go to 4. And we've got a great lineup. We have Mika Silver, Design Life, Joe Potts, Potar, Sakura, Insufficient Despair, and Fog Machine. And then the week before that, on the 14th at the Beatnik Lounge, you are going to be collaborating with, help me out
Oh
here,
yeah, it'll be with Nihil Anon.
Nihil Anand.
Yeah,
Okay.
or Neil Anon, yeah. And
And
we're going to do a coffee theme set, I think, or something, because he runs a very cool roastery called Tristero Coffee in Los Angeles. So
so that's a coffee theme out in Joshua Tree. I I'm really looking forward to both of them.
yeah, yeah, great
Uh,
show. So thanks again for booking us out in Joshua Tree. It's going to be great to be back there.
well, is there anything else you'd like to add um,
Yeah,
to your
well,
fans?
yeah, fans or whoever's listening, maybe you don't know who I am, but I just want to say that if you have that drive to kind of make or express yourself, and uh, for noise or experimental music, I think everyone should go express themselves and move forward with that project. You might feel kind of uncertain. You're like, is this really like something worthwhile? And I think you should just trust your intuition and kind of go with it. So it'll surprise you, really surprise you. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Ryan. So
Yeah.
this has been Ryan Gann. This is Mark Soden for Fog Machine Events, and have a great evening, and we'll see you soon.
See you soon.